Greetings, programs. This is Adam with Irata Non Grata, and got some more Atari news today. This actually hit yesterday, but as you might have noticed if you are a subscriber already or just came across any of my other videos, my background noise is a little bit, well, noisy. And that's because I'm generally filming these from my arcade in Salt Lake City, Utah, called Arcade Galactic, and so I wasn't here yesterday, and so that's why I didn't get this on time. But for all those who have joined in the past week or so, or just everybody who's joined, thank you. Appreciate it. I just doing this for fun. I do have a much bigger channel called Arcade Heroes that I do. I'll put a link below if anybody cares. I talk about brand new arcades and sometimes retro arcades, because I do have quite a few retro arcades. And where this channel's Atari focused, I even have some Atari arcade machines. I have a super rare Atari Games Hydra prototype that I bought from the developer of the game, as well as his copy of Tubin, which has a serial number of number 2, and so and I had him sign them too, so I have proof of that. But anyways, let's get into the news, where Atari announces strategic collaboration with Polymega Incorporated. And if you're not familiar with who Polymega is, I didn't know who they were off the top of my head until I read the end of the sentence, where they're an LA-based company behind the Polymega console. And so, as this line here mentions, that console lets players enjoy original game cartridges and CDs for classic game consoles on HD TVs. And so what this strategic initiative does is adding support for Atari stuff to the Polymega hardware platform. It also does mention the Atari VCS, which I've crapped on plenty. I mean, I think this is anything announced for the VCS at this point is good for people who have already invested into it. I don't see anything as really changing the fortunes of that console to become a real player on the market. But again, if you already have an Atari VCS, this is good news. But to me, this kind of makes the Polymega a little more enticing, and perhaps this is what Atari should have been doing from the get-go. Instead of wasting resources on the VCS, was collaborating with companies like Polymega to get more Atari hardware out there. Because as I recall, the original promise of the Atari box, when it was called that, before it was called the Atari VCS, was to be kind of an Atari platform that would bring together all sorts of stuff from their history. But of course, and it does have some games on there from the 2600, 7800, 5200, and Jaguar, I believe. But it didn't work out quite like everybody had hoped. But of course, part of that also has to do with licensing, but that's a whole nother thing. Anyways, so with the Polymega system, they are going to develop and release a new cartridge module that will add Atari 2600 and 7800 compatibility to that console. And that means that if you have a Polymega, then you'll be able to get that add-on and enjoy those games on the system, but also play them on your TV, and so you wouldn't need to invest in an Atari VCS. You just get this, because this will also have many other systems, as you can see if you didn't already know what this was. In fact, I remember when I first heard about the Polymega, and where they were talking about how it would support things like the Sega Saturn, and I think the original PlayStation and such. It crossed my mind, it's like, gosh, it would be great if the Jaguar CD could be part of that. But obviously, for a big failure as the Jag CD was, that's probably why that wasn't even ever considered, and it would only be something like 14, 15 games, maybe a few more. I mean, for actual Jaguar CD releases, there was 11 within the time that the Tremills were actively pushing the system. Telegames released Iron Soldier 2 and World Tour Racing on CD, which brought it up to 13. And then over the years, there have been some other homebrews. One that comes to mind, and why I say 14, would be Robinson's Requiem by Songbird Productions, which was a completed Jaguar CD game. I have it, just my jack CD doesn't work, and so that's where I would love if they could add that support to this at some point. Perhaps if this new module that they're doing is a success, but like I said, this again, I was already tempted by the Polymega. I just kind of had forgot about it, hadn't heard it in the news in a while, and I can't remember if they were also having troubles getting out or not, but yeah, this would make it quite the thing. It's just that price is a little bit high. I mean, I was critical of the Atari VCS's price and whatnot, but I guess for what you get out of it, where you can play all these CD-ROM based systems from the PlayStation, Sega Saturn, Sega CD, TurboGrafx CD, and Neo Geo CD, that still would be worth it. And so, and then of course you have the extra modules so that you can add in other stuff like NES games and whatnot. So yeah, that's a great little announcement. Atari under Wade Rosen continues to do some nice things that are rewarding to fans. If you already have a Polymega console, are you excited for this? Does this sway you to maybe invest in a Polymega console if you're an Atari fan? If you weren't already convinced by all these other systems that are available for it, what are your thoughts on this one? Do you agree with me? Would you love to see the Atari Jaguar CD get some support on this too? I know that's a huge ask because there's probably like 5 of us that really care. Maybe 10, but let me know what you think, and we'll catch you on the next piece of news, which, again, thanks for all the comments on the Atari 7800 video. We'll do more stuff about that and the Jaguar here soon, and so we'll see you then.